What's up, YouTube, and welcome to my video of the games I picked up in the month of March 2019. Did a little bit of travel this month. I was in Arkansas actually a couple times this month, and also visited Houston, Texas for the first time. So did a little bit of game hunting on the drive, spent a lot of time on the road this month for work and also just personal travel. So found some interesting stuff just out in stores, things that I wouldn't have normally even thought to look for online, and let's go ahead and get started. So first thing I got was an upgrade to a game I've owned on the Sega Genesis for a really long time, and that is a complete in-box copy of Herzog Zwei. This is an early release by Technosoft. It's a interesting, like, real-time strategy game that was pretty innovative for its time, and I've owned this boxed for a really long time, but I've never owned a copy with the manual. So I'm upgrading my copy. I'm going to sell off my boxed copy, and really nice to get a very clean copy of this with the original hang tab and everything like that intact for the collection. So looking forward to playing that again. I've played it years ago, and now I kind of want to pick it up and try it again. Moving on, I'll talk about some of the games I got for Sony systems. First one of these is a variant for PS1. PS1 collecting, I've been pretty slow lately. I really have got just about everything I want for that collection, but there was one game that I saw out in a store this month that I realized this is a variant I don't have, and that is the Resident Evil Director's Cut non-greatest hits version, not the DualShock version. But what's different and variant about this one is it is the single case version. Most copies of this early release were the dual case version that came with a Resident Evil 2 demo. This one does not come with the demo disc, but it was actually released like this. And I don't know if this was released at the same time, and maybe it was for stores that couldn't put the double case in their displays, or if it came out slightly after that version. Maybe after Resident Evil 2 came out and they realized they didn't need to include the demo anymore. But regardless, this is actually a pretty difficult to find variant for the game, so just interesting to have another PS1 variant in the collection. I always like grabbing these whenever I can, and it seems like this one's picked up in price quite a bit lately, so I was happy to find it just randomly in a store selling it for the same price that they normally would. So interesting piece of the PS1 collection to get this month. I got one game for the PS2. This is actually a game I was looking for on the Xbox, but I stumbled on the PS2 version cheap, so I decided to grab it for that. And that is Red Ninja End of Honor. I have not played this one yet, but I always kind of looked this game by. For some reason, it just looked American developed. I think it was the publisher Vivendi Universal that kind of put me off. But reading a little bit more about this, this actually is a Japanese developed game, which piqued my interest, and I like ninja games, so I don't know if this one's heavy on stealth. I would probably assume that it is. But if it is more action-oriented, it should be up my alley. So looking forward to checking this out when I get a chance. And I noticed this one's kind of going up in price, too, for some reason on PS2. So maybe it's decent, maybe it's not. We'll find out. I got one new release for the PS4. This is one that I actually had my eye on when it came out on the Switch, maybe 5-6 months ago. And I still do not have a Switch, so I was like, well, maybe that's one of the games that I would get if I first got a Switch. However, now it's out on PS4, so I have less reason to get a Switch at the moment. But that is the SNK 40th Anniversary Collection. This is a interesting release. It is a compilation of SNK arcade games that were released all pre-Neo Geo. So it's really all their earliest works from the 80s. Very diverse collection. I think the presentation on this is top-notch. There is, like, full motion video and history about every game that they put out, even if they're not included on this pack, which makes me wonder if they're wanting to include more as DLC in the future. But right now it's very, very slick presentation and very detailed. It's kind of what I wish the old Namco museums were on the PS1. So what I can say about it other than that, though, is despite the interesting mix of titles, a lot of these SNK early games are not really very good. I don't know if that's a controversial opinion. Most of them relied heavily on gimmicks, such as unique control options with rotary joysticks, and some interesting sound gimmicks. One of the games has, like, a full music song in it, which is Psycho Soldier, and is actually one of my favorite games on the collection, which is very unusual for an early arcade title. But if you're interested in just seeing an interesting mix of early SNK stuff, don't expect the quality of their later Neo Geo era releases. This is definitely worth getting, and I think it's interesting that they snuck this out on the PS4 months after the Switch version with really very little fanfare. One of my local friends mentioned that this was out, and I had to go ahead and grab it. So, very cool collection if you're into classic arcade collections like I definitely am. Always like to see more of those. I got a PC Engine game this month from Japan that I've actually been really looking for quite a while, and that is Shinobi by Sega. This is a very interesting version of the arcade game. It was actually ported by Asmic, which is a kind of under-the-radar Japanese developer. It's very odd that Sega gave them the rights to do this, because most of the games that Sega released in the arcade that were ported to the PC Engine were done by NEC Avenue. They were like NEC's second party, and I don't know. It got a lot of pluses and pros and cons. So overall, the presentation is probably much better looking than the NES and Sega Master System versions of the game, but it definitely has some still limitations. So if you think about, if you're familiar with Shinobi, the arcade game has the bonus stages where you throw ninja stars. Those are completely removed from this. I don't really know why they couldn't try to pull that off, but that does not have that in the game. I do believe it's also missing a stage from the arcade version is what I read, but the game's difficulty level is very high. It's actually more difficult than the Master System version because they removed the life bar. So I'm actually just struggling to get very far in this game, even though I'm enjoying it so far. I think the artwork on it is absolutely great. I do think that's one of the best things about it, and I think it's neat that this got another home release that was not released in the US. So if you're a big Shinobi fan like me, you might want to get this. Otherwise, might want to pass. It's not like it's a essential piece of the collection. Next, we're going to talk about a Wii game that I know absolutely nothing about. I was in a store and I looked at this and I thought I'd never seen it before, so I just grabbed it knowing that I like to collect kind of quirky Wii games that probably are garbage, and that is Aladdin Magic Racer. I guess the only thing that was interesting about this to me is it was released in like 2011 or 2012, so it's kind of at the end of the Wii life, so I don't imagine there's a whole lot of these out there, but I could not tell you anything about this, and I probably won't even play it. But, you know, that's me just liking to waste money on stupid Wii games. Talk about a couple DS games I got this month. The first one of these is Tetris DS. This is a well-known title on the DS system. It was released first party, which most of the Tetris games weren't. It was kind of interesting that Nintendo went back to put this out. I've heard very good things about this. It has some classic Nintendo characters built into it. I just haven't had the time to play it yet. So this is one that's on my list. I do like classic Tetris games, and I think this one has some new features just to kind of make it a little bit different from some of the classic ones. So looking forward to checking this out when I get time, and I've definitely heard good things about it. I got one other game for the DS this month complete, and that is Mega Man, I gotta read this long-ass title, Mega Man Star Force 3 Red Joker. This is part of this crazy Mega Man Star Force subset that has like, I don't know, 7 or 8 games on the series, but they're variants of the same title. There's only like 3 actual different titles. I don't really know a whole lot of these, but just now that I've got several of these, I'm kind of just trying to get them all, whatever I can grab them cheap. Some of these go for quite a bit of money. I think this is one of the more expensive ones, but I got it really cheap at a store. So anyway, just another Mega Man game for the collection. If you saw my recent video on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, I made a video on my collection for that system, and I actually got 2 games for that system this month. First one of these is one that I talked a little bit about in that video, and that is Last Blade, which is a classic SNK Neo Geo fighter. This actually plays really well on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, and this was one of the very last releases for the US system. I don't even think it got a retail, well, I know it didn't get a retail release when it first came out, so there is no box and book for this game. This is actually the only way to get this game in the US is a loose cart. And the way you can tell it's the US version is it has the ESRB rating on it, on the cartridge. But this came out very, very late in the Neo Geo Pocket Color life, and there's one other title that also came out just loose cart only after the system was dead. I think these were all just sold to wholesalers, and they just kind of cleared them out. But very happy to get this. There's so many fighting games on that system, but this is one of my favorite series. So very happy to get a nice quality fighter for the Neo Geo Pocket Color. One other game I got this month for that system is also loose. I really tend to not buy these games loose, but this one was one I was very curious on, having just freshly played that SNK pack. And that is Dark Arms Beast Buster 1999. What caught my attention about this is that Beast Buster piece. Beast Buster is actually an early SNK light gun arcade game that's on that SNK PS4 pack, and I really got hooked on that. It's kind of a grotesque light gun shooter that was very early, you know, animated, very, very crudely, but kind of fun. And I was like, well, I like the series. I know there's one that was also released on the arcade that never got a home version. And then there's this weird Neo Geo Pocket Color side story game to the Beast Buster series. It's more of an RPG is my understanding, and it probably doesn't have a whole lot to do with the arcade game. but just I was kind of on a Beastbusters kick, and I decided to go ahead and grab this. So I got the cartridge only for about a fifth of what it goes complete, and I figured this will hold me over until I can find a complete copy, hopefully down the road at a better price. A few more portable games I got this month was some games for the original Game Boy. I got Elite Soccer. It's one of the more, I guess, uncommon soccer games for the system. It's not like it's super rare or anything like that, but I got it really cheap, decided to grab it. Still haven't made up my mind if I'm going to finish off that cartridge-only set for the Game Boy original. Probably maybe like 70% there right now, but there's just a lot of garbage that I don't really want to finish it off. Another game I got for the original Game Boy is Black Bass Lure Fishing. This one is complete in the box, even though it's pretty beat up. Not a game I'm going to play, but I got it complete for like $2, and I figured I might as well just to have a complete in the box Game Boy game for a low price. Can't really turn those down. The next one of these is a import game for the original Game Boy, and that is Booby Boys. Obviously, it was not released in the US, but not just due to the title, and if you're wondering why it's called that, it relates to booby traps, so keep your mind out of the gutter. This game was a version of an original Nichibutsu arcade game, and it also was released as Booby Kids on the Famicom. But the US version of the game that we did get was Crater Maze on the TurboGrafx 16. It's like an adapted version of Booby Boys and Booby Kids. Very fun early arcade-style game, kind of a mix of like a Lode Runner and Bomberman game. And I'm looking forward to playing this on the Game Boy. This came out in like '93, so it actually probably has some decent polish. It wasn't like a super early release or anything like that where it'd be real crude. But yeah, I like the artwork on it, and I like Nichibutsu, so looking forward to checking this out. I found this in a store in Houston and was really surprised to see it because this game doesn't come up on eBay very often, so very nice to have it in the collection. I got another curiosity for the Game Boy. This is for the Game Boy Color, and this is actually one of the rarest games on the Game Boy Color, and that is International Superstar Soccer 99 by Konami. This series has like it's very, very popular worldwide, with the exception of the US. So there is several of these. If you get the US releases, they're very rare. There's an ISS game for the PS1 that's incredibly rare, and I think there's a couple others in the series. There's one on Super Nintendo that's incredibly rare. Very, very common to find in global markets, but in the US these can be very uncommon, and this is yet another case of that. So again, not really a huge soccer fan, but interesting to get one of the very rare titles for the system, and I stumbled on this in the store too, so had to get it. That's it for the games this month, but I'll show you a few other things I picked up. I did get some boxes and manuals. So the first one of these was for Dick Tracy on the NES. Not a game I've spent a whole lot of time with, even though I've owned the cartridge forever. And, I don't know, just kind of neat to get that bright, colorful box in the collection. I got Nightshade. This is one that really is kind of a late bloomer. It seems to have a lot more acclaim now than when it was new. I didn't know anybody that owned this game when I was a kid, but it seems like it sold somewhat well, so I'm not really sure just really who this appealed to when it was brand new, but it's a very interesting title. It's got some depth to it, and I actually kind of want to go back and play it now that I've got the box and manual. It's one that I played a little bit when I got it for my collection maybe 15 years ago, so I need to kind of go back and give it a try now, but I've heard some good things, and I think it's got kind of an internet following now that it didn't used to have back in the day. Speaking so much of all this SNK stuff, I found a complete copy of Athena, which I think is kind of one of the more interesting early SNK arcade titles that did get a NES version, and it has really cool artwork on the box. Kind of playing up that this is a huge seller in Japan, but didn't really sell a whole lot here. It's kind of a quirky game, but really neat to get that complete in the box with the cool artwork on the cover. Another game I totally stumbled on, I had loose for a long time, was a really nice, clean, complete in the box copy of Secret of Evermore. This one's got the map and the manual and all that good stuff in it, and just a nice upgrade for my loose cart that I've had for a long time. So nice to get a copy of that complete in the box as well to go. Kind of like all those Squaresoft games that came out on the Super Nintendo. I've got pretty much all of them complete now at this point. I've got two weird accessories that I picked up this month I also want to talk about. So the first one of these is something I've been looking for a while, and I just never pulled the trigger on this online, but I saw it in a store this month, and I had to go ahead and get it. And that is the ASI 360 Sphere controller for the PS1. Sorry, not for the 360. And it has this crazy ball on the top of it. So really the theory here is that it gives you a wider range of control. You can tilt it, you can twist it, you can do all kinds of different angles with it and things like that that you couldn't just do with a D-pad or even an analog stick. don't really think there's a whole lot of games that take advantage of it, though. I think the game that I read, actually, that had some design in mind to use this controller was Forsaken, but I don't own that in my collection yet, so now I need to get a copy of Forsaken just to test this out with that. I think maybe some of the first-person shooters work okay with it, as far as I understand, maybe some flight sims, but very, very quirky controller. It's got a couple of the trigger buttons on the top on this side, and then the other 2 trigger buttons are on the face, and then the rest of it is all the ball. So very, very weird how they did the button placements on this. It would take a lot of getting used to being comfortable using this controller, I think. But it is very comfortable to hold. It has these nice thick handles on it. Just a very odd package for the PS1. If you ever see one of these that comes with the original box and manual, this one didn't. It comes in a really big box, like a fancy like system-style box to really play up just how revolutionary this controller was. So, I don't know, I've really wanted one of these in my PS1 collection. I think this is going to be a collectible in the future, although it's probably 100% useless. It was 100% licensed by Sony, though, I will say that, so there was some, backing of Sony in creation of this thing. And it came out pretty early in the PS1 life, so I think, people were still trying to figure out how best to utilize that system, so that was one of the ideas it came up with. The final thing I got this month is something I've kind of wanted for a while, but I forgot these existed. I stopped looking for them years and years ago, and that is the Turbo Blaster for the NES. This is like a add-on turbo controller that you plug your standard controllers into, and then it has a variety of settings on it here. You could tweak the speed and slow down and then speed up and things like that. This was also officially licensed by Nintendo, I do believe. So this is one of the few licensed third-party accessories for the NES. And I would say the quality on this is very well. It's kind of built with like an all-metal casing. The buttons have a nice feel to them. The knobs have a nice feel. LED lights, all that kind of stuff. So there was some thought put into this thing. I do believe these are pretty expensive when they came out new, so they obviously didn't sell well. The company that created this was BDL Enterprises. I've never even heard of them before. And just an interesting piece of my NES collection I've kind of wanted and then forgot I needed and then stumbled on and got over the month. So that's pretty much it for the month. Hopefully you enjoyed this look at all the stuff I got this month. And please take a moment, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. And I will talk to you soon. Have a great day or night, wherever you are.